Hi. Hey guys, welcome to the new episode. I have a great guest on. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
My name is Juan from the Juan on Juan podcast, and I talk about anything I find interesting, which is usually in the realm of the esoteric, the occult, alchemy, things of that nature. And yeah, dude, thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, like I said, thank you for coming on. I'm a fan. I caught that one episode from last week about the Dragon Ball Z. That one was super interesting. I was listening to it at work.
Yeah,
Um,
we had a lot of
but I,
people talk about that one actually. It's something that first time I had done it, and my buddy Jarizi came on and he presented his information that he had on it, and it's something that we grew up with, and I feel like it's been in the zeitgeist and injected into our collective, growing up. I don't know how old you are, but I'm 30, so I grew up watching Yu-Gi-Oh and Dragon Ball Z and all these other crazy shows that when you really look back at it, they're pretty occultish to say the least. But yeah, that one's doing pretty well.
yeah, I'm 32, so I'm not too much older. I grew up watching Yu-Gi-Oh and stuff too. Wasn't super into Dragon Ball, but I knew of it. I've seen a couple handful of episodes here and there. But I had brought you on to talk a little alchemy. Do you want to explain what that is?
So alchemy is a subject that, to be quite honest with you, I don't think I understand it any more than I did when I first started. But essentially, what alchemy is, it was this, and it's gone through an evolution. But essentially, what it was the precursor to chemistry. And what these guys were trying to do was figure out a way to they figured that if everything is made out of atoms, the same atoms, they could find a way to rearrange them, to purify matter, it's called projection, projecting it to its purest form. And the alchemists, again, it was a sort of secret society. Only the initiates knew the secrets. And of course, the only people who ever achieved the magnum opus, which was the one goal of alchemy. So you'd work your life away trying to discover the philosopher's stone, the magnum opus. But of course, when these guys would achieve the magnum opus, all the ones that did disappeared. They would dissolve out of existence. They would dissolve out of reality. And alchemy has a very interesting origin. It ties into the Nephilim of the Bible. Allegedly, the Nephilim passed down this sacred esoteric knowledge to the daughters of men, right? With the whole Genesis story with the Nephilim and the giants and all that. And then you have a figure that allegedly wrote the secrets of all reality in these tablets, Hermes Trismegistus, which is again this sort of mystical, mythological character that some people say is an amalgamation of Hermes, Thoth, and one more guy in there. But again, this figure that allegedly was the father of alchemy. And there is alchemists who wrote about that in the story. The all biblical patriarchs actually were able to live for as long as they could because they had the philosopher's stone. So it was more accessible back then. Some people have talked about God being this divine alchemist, creating and uncreating reality. And that's where the Watchers come in. We talk about the Watchers being sort of these interdimensional angel alien type of things. Well, they were watching the divine alchemist at work. And that's what you get in the book of Enoch, where they're learning the secret. They know the secrets because they've seen the divine alchemist doing them. So alchemy, it's gone through this weird transition to where now it's like a new age sort of spiritual movement of like purifying your soul to your highest potential and all this other craziness, the new agey stuff. But originally, some people said even Paracelsus, which is the father of toxicology, the guy who introduced the homunculus, a very eccentric character in history, and the archetypal mad scientist, if you will. This guy invented anesthesia, right? Because of this guy, we have anesthesia, this alchemist. And he talked about that the alchemist, the true goal was to purify oneself. So the trick being that as they were working in the lab, mixing, there's different paths. There's the Flammarion path, there's the Paracelsian path, there's the wet path, dry path. There's different methods to achieving the magnum opus. And he said that essentially while they were working, mixing these metals, they were actually purifying themselves. So once they would achieve the magnum opus, they would step outside of space and time, essentially. And in 1930, 30 something, Fulcanelli, the last great alchemist, appeared to this guy and he told him the secrets of alchemy. And it was about, again, stepping outside of space and time and being able to manipulate it from a perspective unlike like a god, essentially.
Mhm.
And the precursor to the CIA actually went looking for him because he knew about the Manhattan Project and about nuclear power 5 years before they even had presented it and had done it. So they were like, how the hell does this guy know about the secrets to nuclear energy, right? And who is he? We want to talk to him. And it was one of these alchemists, bro, that fizzled out of reality. And they never found him. I mean, that's how the story goes, but they never did find him. But yeah, alchemy is an interesting one, dude, because I've looked into it, and the more you look into it, the more it changes. And if I had to guess what alchemy is, it was a practical and spiritual practice that these guys were doing, and they were arranging matter in a sort of way. And the philosopher's stone, we think about it like a stone, or the elixir of life, or we think of it like a potion or anything like that. But maybe it's a breakthrough, the breaking of the barriers of space and time itself, of being able to, and that's what essentially nuclear energy is. They're arranging stuff in a certain geometrical pattern to create this energy, right, inside of these reactors and all that. And I don't know if you've ever seen, right, we're talking about anime, Full Metal Alchemist, that
Yeah,
sort of
that's
like,
the one anime I've seen all the way through. That one and the Brotherhood,
yeah,
the two
and
different
Brotherhood, yeah,
versions.
yeah. So that sort of thing, arranging things in a sort of way where it causes a change. And I mean, dude, you can get into like the layout of Washington, D.C., you can get into the layout of the states, ley lines, dragon lines, whatever you want to call them. And I have some proof that John Dee, which again was another one of these guys trying to achieve the magnum opus and create the Philosopher's Stone. Because once you had the Philosopher's Stone, you could eat it, you could then use it, you could heal yourself with it, you could mix it up with other stuff. And anyone that ever talked about the Philosopher's Stone talked about it being sweet, right? So it was sweet to the taste. And when you digest it, you'd heal yourself, you could live longer, you could rejuvenate yourself. So there's stories of alchemists taking these elixirs and these things, and they would kind of go through a transformation. Their hair would fall out, their nails would fall out, their teeth would fall out, and they'd grow back again. There's other stories of alchemists transmuting into androgynous beings. So Fulcanelli was one where when Eugene Consaliet saw him, his last disciple, he saw him as like a young woman after some years had passed by in this interdimensional castle that he was in. It's a very interesting story.
Yeah, it
But
sounds like
again,
it.
yeah, but it's like, hey, I've never done the magnum opus. I've never, in order to create a homunculus, you need the philosopher's stone. So only I call alchemy and the homunculus like it's the utility knife of the occult. So they had all their boxes checked, and that's why a lot of kings and emperors look at Rudolph II. I call him the alchemical emperor. He had an entire court of alchemists working. There's a place in Prague called Alchemist Alley, and it's where all the alchemists lived, and they all worked around the clock trying to figure out the philosopher's stone for the emperor, because they're like, all right, well, once you have it, unlimited gold, so infinite money glitch. Boom, you just make a bunch of gold. You want to live forever to spend all that gold? Sure. Here's the elixir of life. You're gonna live for a long time now. Oh, and you want to what? You're tired of all that? You want to transcend reality? We can do that too. So it's like it's got everything covered. Now, was it real? Was it not? Well, porcelain came from a guy trying to create the Philosopher's Stone. So all the toilets that we all sit on, the golden throne, was created by an alchemist. Gelato was created by an alchemist. So we have all these things that were accidentally discovered because these guys were pursuing this,
Mm.
right? So an entire industry was born out of this. And then from this, you have chemistry. So it went from woo woo to more of like, hey, you mix this and you get this. And we know that's true. If you mix certain chemicals together, you get reactions. And they believe that doing that the precise way and the correct way, you could create this philosopher's stone. So, because everything is made out of the same material, and if you're able to rearrange that molecular structure of whatever, then lead is in gold because it's made out of the same atoms. So let's figure out a way to rearrange them to bring forth, right? They want to bring this metal to its mature state, whichever they all thought, metallurgy, it was lead could turn into gold eventually, right? So, and the Egyptians were doing this, they were changing the color of metals. So there were some of the first alchemists, right? Alchemy at first was, and that's where you get the fraud in alchemy, where it's like, oh, these guys are just charlatans, right? They're just here to trick people. Well, because there was a lot of that. There was a lot of guys who were like, hey, I made gold. Here it is. Well, show us. I can't, you know, I have to work in secret. It's like, well, so did you really do it, or did you just sprinkle it in there and say it was already in there? You know? So it's a wild ride, and I don't think that the more I read about it, the less I understand it, it seems. But it's an interesting topic where you can just focus on any one thing and just go down a whole dark rabbit hole. And that's where I stumbled across like the homunculus. And that's a whole nother wing of alchemy, which is again the artificial creation of life, which to some people that is being God, right? That is the highest level, creating life from nothing, from inanimate matter, animating it, right? Giving life to it. Some people see that as blasphemy because only God can give life and only God can take it away. But in any religion that you really see, it's all about either the emulation of God, so being God-like, or becoming God, it seems like. And some religions would say, hey, I am a God, or whatever it is that they say. Again, very new age. So, oh, we're all gods trapped in this body. That's new age stuff. But that's the thinking back then that some of these guys had, and they broke off all into their different sects of alchemy. So you had different paths, and this guy studied this one alchemist's. You got the Valentinian path, the Paracelsian path, the Flammarion path, and they all had their own ways of achieving. And that's why I think it's a form of technology, and that's why I think that you're able to tap into that. That everything is alchemy, dude. And any exchange of energy is alchemy. The monetary system, money itself, if you follow its origins right to the Knights Templar, who were also in tune with alchemy. If you follow it deep enough, allegedly it came forth from this entity that they were in contact with. One of the first Faustian pacts, if you will, right? They had the head of John the Baptist allegedly that prophesied to them and gave them secrets of how to create unlimited wealth. And here you are, right? The one of the most powerful organizations that are probably still around today. That's what people say that the Freemasons are. They were some of the Templars. When they got disbanded, they just formed a new sort of group, and that's where you get Freemasons from. Which again, back again to this idea of working with materials with your hands, right? Jesus was a carpenter. So there's something to be said about working with your hands and molding things together. So, and I don't know about you, but they say that when you doodle as you're listening to something, like you draw as you're listening to something, you retain it better because there's something about that. And they're taking us away from that. If you look at it,
Yeah,
everything is,
multitasking.
huh?
I said that multitasking, it unlocks certain parts of the brain.
Yeah. And just the art of writing itself. If you think about the, this is a wand, right? This
Hmm.
is essentially what back then the architect was a magician. The you know everyone was a sort of magician in a magical sort of way. And so and that's why they want you typing. They don't want you connected anymore. Nobody writes really anymore. Everything's digital. It's going towards a digital age, so you're being disconnected from that. And yeah, dude, I mean, I wish I could answer what alchemy is, but I'm still trying to figure it out, dude.
No, I think you've done a pretty good job. That was a really depth. Um, I would say conversation, but you were kind of talking the whole time. Um, but yeah, my next follow-up question would have been if you thought it was possible to create it. I think you did answer it in a couple different ways. So another one I had was, have you heard about the Book of Aquarius?
Was it you a couple of people have commented about that on my
I think I
YouTube,
did on Twitter one time. Um,
and I did
because
check it out. I checked some of it out. I didn't finish it though.
yeah, because I was watching what was it? It was Joe Rogan, but it was Cat Williams. I couldn't think of his name. I had a brain fart. And he brought up the Trismegistus on it. And so that led me to a Y Files episode talking about the Emerald tablets. And they brought this up about the book, that it is a guide to how to create the Philosopher's Stone. And they do bring up like the dry and wet path, the different versions that, everything is connected in the sense that it's all been touched by God.
Hmm.
So depending on your diet, how you take care of yourself, you can get that God energy or life energy is what they call it in the book. And if you had a good diet, fresh, organic, um, and more raw, it says cooking it can get rid of some of the energy. You can kind of build that up, and then it's through your urine that you can create the philosopher's stone. So it's kind of a weird process, but it kind of makes sense
There's a lot of
when
people
you do it.
who swear up and down by like the urine therapy. I Again, there's been so many different interpretations of it. Is that possible? Probably. I mean, maybe that's one of the versions of it because there's the white stone and the red stone. And yeah, I mean, it could be these dudes were doing that. They were mixing literally their toenail clippings, hair, anything that they could possibly think of in pursuit of this thing, right? Of this elusive uh, material. And dude, I mean, some people are even still doing that till this day. There's some people that are still trying to figure it out, and some people claim that they have, right? But
I
it's
won't
like,
say in the book, I forget who they said did it, but somebody was trying to do it, and that's how we got phosphorus
mm,
was due to kind of like boiling urine and stuff.
yeah,
I did catch the Cryptid Huntress an episode, and they talked about that the reason maybe certain ancient societies had so much gold was because they're doing some kind of process with the urine from their gods, the Nephilim, and through filtering it, they were getting like these gold pieces, which I think they said that humans have a very small minute of gold in the urine. So I wonder if there's something to that. That's something about natural processes.
really.
If you concentrate the God energy, you just use God's energy to do certain things. So I could see how it becomes a spiritual journey because you gotta believe that it's gonna work out, that it
The
works.
the guys, the Taoists, they were doing that, but they were doing it was more semen retention, right? Meditation, semen retention, and they were allegedly creating what I've called alchemical embryos. They were impregnating themselves and they were able to project this entity out of themselves. Again, if it was spiritual or not, I don't know. And this entity would come out of their some people say the solar plex, some people say the crown chakra, and it would be projected outwards, and it would exist in this reality, and that would help the monk or the Buddhist or whoever escape samsara, escape reincarnation, because a piece of himself was in this reality. So he was able to glitch the system and then just pass on to the next life or whatever it was. So there's, now that you're mentioning the urine stuff, that would fall in line with the, and think about like a kidney stone, right? We were talking about the
Yeah.
philosopher's stone, a kidney stone. And also there is something called a I believe it's called biological transmutation. And don't quote me on this. I might be getting the name wrong, but it's what, for example, a chicken creates an egg, right? And the shell is high in calcium, but a chicken doesn't ingest enough calcium to create the outside shell of the egg. So where is the eggshell coming from? But so
Yeah.
these little chickens are creating that, like, and a biological transmutation. So they're like little alchemists creating the calcium that goes around the egg, but you're not feeding them calcium. So where's it coming from? And again, is it
Wouldn't that be kind of like stem cells so they can become something else when needed?
nowadays, dude, they're taking cells and making and turning them into robots. They're taking people's cells and they're turning them into these biological robots that will go into their body and attack other cells and all this other craziness. So
Yeah.
that
Man-made holes.
that's wild, bro. That's pretty crazy that they're able to take your own cells, your body's gonna recognize them, and then they just program them to do something. Imagine what else they're doing if they're doing that. Just how
Yeah.
you can do it for good, you can do the inverse and do it for bad, right? Like you can use your imagination as to what they could do. But yeah, no, absolutely. And I did start that book, but I never.
Go around to, yeah, it can be a hard read because it has like the original text from the books because
Mhm.
he's or they, I don't know who wrote it. They've gone through all the like the old books and texts trying to get the information. So it's like this is what I think they're trying to say,
Mhm.
and then it's what they actually said. So
Oh,
it can be a hard read, the old languages and stuff. But that's something they bring it up in the book is that because you're doing natural processes, you're just doing what not what God intends, but just you're working within his laws. So it's
yes.
not,
It's
in a
natural
sense,
magic. It's called
yeah, it's
natural
not
magic.
unman and natural to create it. Um, they also bring that up with the homunculus, but I don't know if I would say that it would extend that far. But yeah, that
Well,
if you can create,
they believed it was. They believed that they were, so you had again different sects of alchemists that doing good. So their magic was good. Their homunculus was good because it adhered, how you're saying, to these laws of God. And the reasoning behind it was, as long as I'm using things that are natural in nature, hence natural magic, then it's okay with God. I'm not breaking any laws, any taboos, or anything that would make it blasphemous or heretical. As long as you're not using an astral influence in the working in the formula, then you're good to go. Because they believe that astral influences were demonic, right? So if you're using Jupiter's energy or whatever it is, you're actually dealing with a demon. And it's interesting because the Gnostics were some of the first alchemists, and they believed that every celestial body was actually a different demon, and every orbit of these celestial bodies was a different dimension of this demonic entity. So they believe that the soul, when you would when you were trying to go to the other side to become one with the one, with the source, this entity, your soul would have to pass through the different celestial orbits essentially, and you'd have to encounter these demons and battle them. And if you failed at any of the circles, you'd be sent back down and reincarnated, because they believed that this reality itself was actually the creation of a demonic entity, and that we were living in some sort of simulation. So I mean that's those were the original Christians, the Gnostics, and they also they practiced and some worshipped Hermes Trismegistus in some of the writings. If you look back at it, they revered him essentially, like almost like a saint. So yeah, you're absolutely right that they were working within these boundaries of, and during even the Renaissance, right, 15th, 16th century which was heavy into alchemy, and alchemy shortly after that kind of sort of died off. They had to operate within these boundaries, or else they'd be burned at the stake. They'd be killed because they were dabbling in the occult. So this is how these guys were able to get away with it, where they're like, hey, if I'm working for the emperor or whoever it is, I'm doing something good. I'm adhering to these, maybe not Christian, but, Catholic or whatever virtues. And this plays, you're talking about this book has the formula to the Philosopher's Stone. Well, I've seen some alchemists write about that the book of Genesis is actually the recipe to the Philosopher's Stone. And some alchemists saw the book of Genesis as one of the greatest alchemical writings that there ever was. And they're like, hey, these are the instructions. You just have to know how to read it. And mind you, we have translations. If anyone's ever told you that they've actually read the Bible, they've never read the Bible. They haven't read the Bible in its original context. If we're being for real, like you've read the Bible, you've read the King James version
of it
or something else. Like you don't know what's been changed, and that's important because context. I'm bilingual, and whenever I'm trying to say something in Spanish versus in English, sometimes it changes up. And think about that when it comes to a translation of Aramaic or Greek or wherever it comes from to Hebrew or to Latin or to English. It's going to change. So do we have the original context? I don't believe so. I think that we're missing a lot of stuff, and I think that the Bible is it's a grimoire of some sorts. It's a magical book, and this is why you have societies like the Rosicrucians that they looked at, for example, the book of John, the Gospel of John, as some sort of mystical sort of book, and they would meditate upon the first chapters of John, and they talked about going into the text, going into this other reality through meditating on the text itself. So you tell me, bro, I mean, what the hell's all that about?
Yeah, I mean, if it's just concentrated God energy, then you could just make it a certain different way.
Yeah.
Depending, because one of the episodes I watched recently to try and get ready for this conversation was the one you guys did about David and Goliath and the stone.
Mm-hmm.
If you could just concentrate the energy in any way, that would be the stone. And there could be different ways, direct intervention, what the book says. Like I haven't read much of I do have a King James Bible around here somewhere, but I haven't done much into it, so I can't really argue too much about the Genesis.
Yeah, no, and the first book I ever read in the Bible was Revelation. And Revelation, they say, if you really look at it, they say that it's actually about because in alchemy, there's a heavy emphasis. And this is where, again, and don't take my interpretation of alchemy as the one, because there's guys like Adam McLean, which are guys that interpret alchemical texts, and these are OGs in alchemy. Like these guys are, Adam McLean is one of those guys that he's done a lot of work in alchemy. And he's the kind of guy that if you study his books, because he teaches you how to read, chemical imagery, it's very matter of fact. Like these guys were, talking about that you can't take an alchemical plate, extract it out of a sequence that it's in, and interpret it by itself. Like you're not supposed to do that, according to some people. And my version of alchemy, as I've come to understand it, is a bit tainted, right? So it's more supernatural, more woo-woo. You got guys that'll laugh at that, like, oh, like Bigfoot is an interdimensional creature, Nephilim thing. No, it's actually an ape, So it's like point is that there's still something there. If it is interdimensional or not, we're still trying to figure it out because nobody really knows what's going on, right? And I'm just using that as an example as the, you know, UFO argument as well. It's like, oh, well, they're interdimensional. Oh, well, they actually come from another planet. Like, you're always going to have that. Those are two opposing views. But yeah, the way I've come to understand alchemy is very, very woo woo and out there. So don't take it for my word, but alchemy involves the creation of what Carl Jung, he also was studying alchemy in depth. And he referred to the book of Genesis being a blueprint to create an unus mundus, a world, again, essentially a miniature world, right? A miniature reality. And the book of Revelation, because in alchemy you have the destruction of celestial spheres, celestial bodies, and the way that they show this in these alchemical plates is they're taking Saturn, right? And he's represented as this old man with a scythe or whatever, and they're breaking that down, or they're taking the sun and the moon or Mercury, and they're breaking that down and stuffing it and killing it into this alchemical vessel. All right, so you have a lot of that. The dragon, the lion eating the sun. So it's about the destruction of celestial bodies or other realities. And then from that concoction that you're making, you're birthing a new reality outward. So the way I've come to understand the book of Revelation from Tracy Twyman's work, the way that she's put out is that the book of Revelation is actually showing the destruction of one reality and the birth of a new one. The birth of a new reality. And if you think about Mithras, right, being birthed through the stone, essentially what happened was he destroyed one reality behind him and he's being birthed into the new one. You know, he's coming into the new one. So again, that's very apocalyptic, very apocryphal, where it's the destruction. The apocalypse is the unveiling. You know, what does that mean? Well, nobody knows, dude. We're still arguing, and this is the beautiful part about all this, that we're still talking about this hundreds of years later, thousands of years later, trying to decipher it. And these were the same questions that they were trying to find answers to as well. You know? So again, it's this Ouroboros, and that's where you get that symbol from. The snake eating its tail, or is it throwing itself back out? You know? Is it regurgitating itself out and creating itself, or is it eating itself? Well, you don't know. Yeah. You know? It's interesting to think about.
I've heard that about like the universe, that they think it expands so far and then it collapses and then you have like the Big Bang again. So, but yeah, this book talks a lot about like cycles. That's one of them. To create, you have to destroy, and it's like life and death. But I had another thought earlier. You were talking about like all the atoms. I feel like that with life, how a lot of things have the same basic DNA, is because we're all made out of the same stuff. So it would make sense we have a good chunk of the same thing. And then going back to the cryptid stuff, I think there's a lot of different answers. It's not just one thing. Like they could be the Nephilim and a gorilla, you get Bigfoot, or they could be giant apes out there still, or maybe some of them could be homunculus. If you mixing, ape DNA and man, you could create some kind of hybrid. I think it says if you liquefy the stone, that's the elixir life. Mm-hmm. So if you drip that on any kind of biological matter, eventually you can create life. And it talks about sizes too. So that's interesting. You bring up like the miniature world. If you had the stone, could you make a small person, like, microscopic almost?
A homunculus, yeah. A miniature man. No, and you said that so that book, the Aquarius, you said that also talks about that's all that you're talking to me about comes from that book. I'm gonna have to sit down and read it.
Yeah, it's a very good read. Like towards the end,
you read you read a version with like commentary or something, or did you? Because I found an audio version of it, but it was like the original.
I bought the book online.
Oh, and it's got commentary on it.
No, but there is a whole. I'm trying to find it, but there is a whole chapter on homunculuses.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, and it talks about how projection, how it can help with astral projection, expanding yourself, um, like that. What is it?
What the
Maybe it
heck?
doesn't. I thought it had a chapter on homunculus.
Oh, it's a lot more interesting than I thought. Let me double check here, see if I can pull up a copy here.
And
And this
yeah, what?
they don't know where this book comes from, essentially, right?
Yeah, somebody posted it anonymously.
Of course. The Book of
That's
Aquarius.
possible.
Anonymous. Oh man. Might be worth reading on a late night under a full moon around Halloween. So released on 3/20/2011. Book of Aquarius.forgottenbooks.org. You can find a copy on the archive.org. And you said there's a homunculus chapter?
I thought there was, but looking in the
Here, I'll search it up here, homunculus.
table of contents, I'm not picking it up. I thought they had talked about it.
Here, I'm doing a word search on it on the archive. Yeah, so it's got something
Yeah.
about homunculus here. Yeah. All right. Oh, so Takwin. Yeah, yeah. It talks about so Takwin was the
Oh yeah,
Arabic
Tarquin. That's what it's listed under.
Arabic version of so Takwin is advanced alchemy, which deals with the creation of life through alchemy and using the life-giving powers of the stone. It is not easy to find information about Takwin, but of course it is possible. If nature can do it, so can alchemy. Because the way I've heard alchemy being described is you're exposing the occulted aspects of nature, right? So it's already there. You just have to know how to navigate and how to essentially massage it out to bring forth those secrets.
Yeah, I don't know if it's in the book or if I heard it on a podcast, but yeah, it's that the alchemist doesn't create anything. You just create the environment or
Yeah.
the right process for it to be created. You so you're not really doing it. You're just allowing it to be created on an accelerated timescale.
Yeah, they talk about it here. They let the sperm of a man by itself. Yeah, he's quoting Paracelsus and the nature of things, which was one of the first time that the homunculus was ever mentioned. But there were descriptions of similar things before, and they just had different names. Like they just called it, a humanoid or a form, the child, the thing, like the thing, the substance. Also, I've heard it called. So it's interesting. And one of the things that, because you mentioned cryptids, and of course, I've Tony Merkel's a friend of mine, and Joel Thomas. In Oak Ridge, right? There's that collider, and there's a lot of these different colliders all over the world. And I actually have a local one too. And the way I've heard that these guys put it, I don't know if you've ever looked into. I think it's called, and don't quote me on this, AMP Research. I think it's the channel. I haven't talked to these guys, but their research, what they're insinuating is that every different reactor, every different collider is actually a different angel. And they don't really understand how these things work. They just work because they happen according to whenever this thing wants to happen. Right. So, and this is where you get into the aspect of, like, for example, Manly P. Hall. He said, the alchemist no longer works in a cave. The cave has been replaced by 4 walls. And now the alchemist wears a lab coat, essentially. So these dudes that are at CERN, they're talking about, they don't know what the hell they're doing. They've never really told us what they're doing there. But one of the interesting parts about CERN, for example, is that it's got I believe the largest, or one of the largest, arrays of magnets in the entire world. And the interesting part about a magnet is that the way I've heard it put in these grimoires is that the magnet is the stone of choice of the magician. And magnet is also important in the alchemical process. And in the grimoires that talk about the creation of homunculi, they talk about using magnet. And there's this book that I read from 1692, something like that, or was translated into English in 1692, 1694, called The Voyage to the World of Cartesius. And this is a fictional story about Rene Descartes allegedly figuring out the secrets of consciousness and being able to project his consciousness into this other reality and being able to study in these other realms. And he also gets into the creation of galaxies and stars and universes and in a very alchemical way. And this crazy ass book from 1690, whatever, the first time they've ever used outer space in the sci-fi sense is in this book. It's a very obscure book. I have the only video on it on YouTube in existence ever. Anywhere on the internet, it's by me and Paranoid American. And one of the things that stood out to me out of all the crazy stuff that this guy's talking about in this book, one of the things that he says very clearly goes, I'm revealing all these secrets to you. Because mind you, a lot of these occultists would write fictional stories to veil and to cover real things, right? And it's up to you, the initiate, to understand like, hey, he's actually speaking truth under the guise of a story, right? Like, oh, look at these characters. No, it all represents something. And one of the things that he says in this story, in this book, that really stood out to me and I still think about till this day is, I've revealed all these secrets to you, but one of the secrets that I can't reveal is the secret to magnetism. Because if I were to reveal the secret of magnetism to you, you'd go insane. So think about, again, magnets, magnetism, all these things, like how that plays a role into the art. And dude, I mean, they've talked about, and I did a short on this, the way that they put it was the entity, quote unquote, living within the Hadron Collider. That they have this force in there that they don't know what it is, but it's messing with their tests. There's like a specter in there that's messing with their test. So like, how do you know it's not like freaking Ghostbusters, you know, where they keep all the ghosts in that box and they eventually like break out? It's like, what do you know if it's not that, dude? Like you're containing something that you don't know what it is. Literally, it's the Titans trying to escape from Tartarus. They've been imprisoned in this thing. And you're opening up Pandora's box. I mean, there's stories about this throughout history. Once you open those floodgates, there's no closing them. And it's interesting that CERN, part of it runs over an old Apollyon temple, right? The one that holds the key to the abyss in the book of Revelation. But I'm sure that's just a coincidence, dude. You know?
I think some things are coincidences, but obviously a lot of things are on purpose by design. But yeah, no, you bring up magnetism, that makes me think of, was it the Philadelphia experiment, where they're just like, enough power, we can make stuff happen with enough electricity, wanting to do something. But also I think the way the reality is structured, a lot of it is like collapsing in on itself, kind of like a tesseract, but very more multi-sided, and things just happening that we don't understand. So it makes sense, if you have concentrated energy, you can make something happen, or some kind of portal connection to a different reality. I think I saw a short on YouTube saying some people now think that what we call the fabric of reality is actually like wormholes, like weaved together. Since they operate through time and space, it affects things differently.
Really? So that reality is the fabric of reality. So what we perceive as reality could actually be a wormhole, and what we're just traveling through it or something, being stretched out? Or how does that work?
No, it was saying, like, if you think as like a fabric, how it's like interwoven cloth, all those strands would be the wormhole, all interwoven, so it's easy for 2 points to make connections.
Yeah.
If you do certain things a certain way. But
yeah,
it also reminds me of a movie called I think it was the Banshee chapter. That's really good. You should check it out. But it was inspired by Lovecraft and
the
the story of the
Banshee
tuning.
chapter.
Yeah, Banshee chapter.
2013.
Huh. because it has to do with like this drug, which seems like a stand-in for like DMT.
A chemical, yeah,
And
yeah. So investigative journalist Anna looks into the disappearance of her friend who she believes ingested a secret government chemical. Her search leads her into a disturbing world of covert operatives with one strange radio transmission troubling her. Oh, it does sound interesting, bro.
yeah, actually, it brings up like MK Ultra and stuff too. But like the main core of it is inspired by Lovecraft, and they bring up in the movie the story of the tuning fork. That as the guy was tuning tuning it, he could see this portal open up, and the more he tuned into the right frequency, the more it expanded until it was too late. He realized the creatures on the other side could see him too, and they just waited until he opened the door right big enough or made a connection for them to come through.
Oh, snap. And that's in this movie?
Yeah, like through MK Ultra, they tuned into some kind of frequency, got the formula, recreated it, and then it, became kind of like this the thing. You ingested it, you made the connection, and people would disappear.
What the heck? Yeah, no, that sounds interesting. That sounds like, again, like the elixir of life. What if that's what it was, right? You ingest it and you're able to see these things on the other side and interact with them. And maybe, dude, just to riff off of that, maybe that's why you get all these depictions of these grotesque creatures and entities in alchemical art, right? Like what if that's what a chimera is?
Froze again.
Can you hear me? Am I gonna lose you again? Yo, you froze up, bro. They don't want us to talk about the chimeras. Yo, can you hear me? You're back.
Yeah, you're back.
So maybe that's what the chimeras are. Maybe that's what the Nephilim are, right? These entities on the other side. And it would make sense that these entities gave the secrets in the beginning. Like it's just the very beginning. It's been these entities. It's been about knowledge. It's been about the secret knowledge. And the Nephilim are to blame, right?
Well, yeah, don't I won't say in the book they bring up like I said, the Trismegistus, twice great, that he's from Atlantis, and there's a lot of connections to Atlantis and the Nephilim or advanced technologies.
Yeah, I've also heard that alchemy was the technology that they used in Atlantis. Yeah, most definitely. And that's what led to its downfall. So if you think about, right, their hubris led to their downfall of I think, wasn't it they were creating blasphemous things that led to their downfall, the story of Atlantis? Or again, this is probably fan fiction, but
I'm not too sure, but it kind of makes sense because you can create something in the laws of God, but how aggressive is that creature? You don't know what it's capable of once it's hatched. So I can see it just experiments gone wrong. They bust out. They harm a lot of people
and that's what
because you can't control it.
Frankenstein's monster. That's all that's about.
Yeah.
Your creation, the golem, getting out of control, and the homunculus itself, like the homunculus, never, for my research, I haven't encountered anything that would insinuate that the homunculus would harm its creator. It was usually the other way around. The creator would harm the homunculus to bring forth this.
That could be something to it too.
Yeah.
If you treat it as an experiment, it's gonna harbor hate and anger. But if you're carrying like a child, maybe it can come out differently. But
No,
then again,
definitely.
you never know.
Yeah. No, and maybe that's what the secret is. I've heard that the secret to everything is love, right? So maybe loving your creation is the secret to, right? Like love, you can't explain love to people. You just feel it.
Yeah.
Like what if that's the secret of the mysteries? Love. Like when I don't know if you have kids or not, but when you look at your kids,
Yeah.
for the first time, like you can't describe that feeling to anybody unless they've been there. You know what I'm saying? So that's an interesting take, dude. The loving your monster, and it'll be good. And if you create it just to create it, because that was one of the interesting points about the homunculus, where some alchemists believed, some research.
That's not working. It froze again.
They don't want us to know about the homunculus, bro. Can you hear me? Let me know when you come back. You want to try shutting your video off? Can you hear me?
The internet, see if that works.
Can you hear me? Test,
Yeah, I
test.
can hear you. You're back.
You want to try shutting your video off to see if that'll help?
What video? Like the camera?
Yeah. Maybe that sometimes I have that help. You should.
That or just keep it off.
Yeah, keep it off so it doesn't take up that much bandwidth. And maybe
Yeah,
it'll
I'll
help.
do that for now. I'll always add my face back.
The some researchers talked about the homunculus being an artificial demon, and I've also seen that some believe that while you were in the creation of this thing, the only way that you were able to get into the state of mind was to become possessed. So you get this weird thing of like the you become the monster as you're trying to create a monster sort of thing, right? So evil breeds more evil, and some people saw it as that. Other people saw it as they were becoming a god because they were doing this process. So
I was just thinking that the idea of I am a god, I created you can lead to, the tyrannical kind of dictatorship kind of thing. It's like you do what I say, I created you.
So keep that in mind, dude. So we're talking about different interpretations of the Bible, different versions. What do a lot of people say? And there was a belief between the Cathars, which was a group of Gnostics. They believe that the Old Testament was the creation of a demonic entity. And think about that. That's always been a debate as to why Yahweh was so evil. Like, why was he so evil, right? Why did he always want blood? Why did he salivate at the smell of burning flesh and burning fat? It's like, what was that really? And you get into this realm of like, I've heard people talk about Yahweh being a dragon, bro. But then if you go into that sort of thinking, well, wasn't Yahweh the God of, or the father of Jesus, essentially? Like, yeah. So it gets into this weird realm of like very blasphemous and very heretical. But there's a lot of dragons in alchemical symbolism. So maybe they were onto something. Maybe they knew about something. I don't know, dude. But it's interesting to think about now that you're mentioning that part of I am a very righteous and jealous God, right? In the Old Testament. Let's see what the can't find the Bible verse. No, I can't find the Bible verse. Oh yeah, so for you shall worship no other God, for the Lord whose name is jealous is a jealous God. That's in Exodus 34:14. So why was he so jealous? Right? If you know that you're the one true God, what does it matter what people worship or not?
Well, I think that comes back to, like I said, the concept of the reality, everything being connected. If you can see all realities, all timelines, then what will come if too many people start worshiping too many other entities. They get too strong, too powerful, too much chaos. So I could see how that can turn you into kind of like the monster you try to stop, you become.
Yeah.
In that aspect of trying to control everything.
And it's interesting because Moses was also revered as one of the greatest alchemists of all time. And I believe there's a story. I don't know if it's canon or not, so don't quote me on this, but they burn down, they melt down the golden cow, the golden calf. And I believe he also fed it to the people too, like parts of it. They melted it down, and we know some people eat gold. Right, there's people who mix gold in their drinks, and there's people who put gold in their steaks. So that was just like another one of those weird things where they were worshiping this thing, and that's why God was pissed off too. Right, he comes down from the mountain with the 10 Commandments, like, yo, what the hell are you guys doing? Here they are worshiping this golden calf. And the Ark of the Covenant, I've also heard that some of the stories is that it housed the emerald tablets. And what if its source of energy was a philosopher's stone, dude? Who
They
knows?
yeah, when I was looking through the chapters, they actually bring that up about like lanterns in like King Solomon's temple.
Yes.
If you add a bit of the stone to any kind of oil, it becomes like infinite or
Oh
whatever.
wow. Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
I think it says they don't know how it happens, but basically you do something like that, and that's what it's supposed to do. But a lot of the old texts, it's hard to find out.
that
And
was that was one of the things too in these grimoires, dude, that lamps that would burn forever was one of the things that would show you how to do. So it's interesting you bring that up because King Solomon, I'm gonna have to probably read this book, bro. It's not that long, but
no,
it's
it's
got
definitely an interesting read. Like the process is pretty straightforward since it's only one ingredient. It just talks about everything being the right temperature for exactly the right amount of time. It can be anywhere from like a year and a half to like 8 years, but it's definitely possible how people would spend their whole lives because you don't know what's wrong, just that something is.
mm-hmm. And how many have done it and didn't realize that they did it, right? That they created it. You should check out this book. Let me find the Israel. It's called um let me find it for you. It's called Israel regarding the Philosopher's Stone, the alchemical arts brought down to earth, and it's by Joseph C. And I don't know how to say his last name. I've heard it said a bunch of times. Leshewski. Yeah, I'll send you a link so you can check it out, dude. Check this book out, bro. And I can send you a copy of it if you want. I got a PDF copy of it.
Sure.
And read that book, dude. And that particular guy, he allegedly created a homunculus and he documents it. But of course, he didn't take any pictures. This was in the 80s.
Hmm.
And he had figured it out through, I think it was like the Golden Chain of Homer or something or other, some other, obscure book. He had figured out the secrets. But it's really, really well written. And Israel Regardie is one of these guys that he did irreversible damage to his lungs while trying to create the Philosopher's Stone. And he eventually gave up and was like, actually, the Philosopher's Stone is just a philosophical, spiritual thing. There's no such thing as a real Philosopher's Stone.
Hmm.
Because he breathed in I forgot what gas, like some really bad gas for you. He breathed it in, and essentially it just like liquefies your lungs. And
Well, that's what the book warns when you do a certain process with like the heavy material.
yeah,
It produces a really black smoke that it's poisonous. So I could see that.
yeah. So this happened to Israel Regardie, and he damaged his lung. He did it twice, and the
And it
second
stains
time,
everything too.
yeah, the second time he was
Black.
like, "I'm out." I tap out. This is a spiritual sort of thing because he was doing it in his tool shed in his backyard at his
Oh
house,
yeah,
bro.
it says do it outside.
So again, it's all interesting, dude. And if you think about like the furnace, maybe that's what all the dragons in all these stories that we hear about, what they actually represent, right? It's this furnace. It's the controlling of the temperatures. And I've heard that alchemy is the worship of fire because the alchemist needs to know the different temperatures to which boil things to, and it's about the controlling of that temperature. So, and there's a lot isn't it at 33 degrees Celsius water boils or something, or it freezes?
Um, I don't know about the Celsius. I know 32 Fahrenheit it freezes, but yeah, it talks about like the inner working of the body. to be able to activate the cycles that's within us, like the digestive system and stuff. It has to be about the internal temperature of the human body, which is about like 100 and something.
Yeah, so water freezes at 32 degrees or colder. And is this Fahrenheit or Celsius? Yeah, water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. But seawater freezes at about 28.4 Fahrenheit because of the salt in it. Another important thing about alchemy is the salts too.
Yeah, they bring that up about the process that creates the black smoke is to really burn away the moisture, and all the heavy particles eventually turn into the salt, or what the book calls the salt that you use to further the stone.
Whoa. Yeah. No, definitely, dude. I mean, alchemy itself is a whole process that you can, like I said, you can dive into and just pull out hours and hours and hours. I'm gonna read this book too. I had started it, but I'm gonna finish it because it sounds like it's got the juice, bro. Maybe somebody revealed more stuff than they should have, and since they
It
didn't.
seems like it, but I started following after I was reading it, the subreddit on of alchemy, and some people say they did a lot of stuff right, but some stuff wrong. So I don't know how accurate, but it seems like it could get you pretty close. Needs more research may be necessary.
Yeah, I stay away from that subreddit. There's a bunch of people on it. It's like there's so many different interpretations, and like it's like how you were mentioning
That's what they
earlier.
bring up in the book about how a lot of things are so in your face, but it's coded. Like they bring up the hematic order of the Golden Dawn.
Yeah,
Everything has to be hermetically sealed throughout the process to
yeah.
keep the water vapor in. But Golden Dawn refers to the golden color when you pee in the morning. That's the best time to collect it. So it's like so like in your face.
The
But
morning
I don't know how true it is.
from a morning wood, bro.
Mhm.
So you gotta chop that tree down. Yeah, maybe that is the secret. But yeah, no, definitely. And I was gonna say something. I forgot what I was gonna say, but yeah, I think that a lot of oh yeah. So you mentioned at the beginning about the God energy and being able to concentrate it. Well, I've always referred to it as a sort of a stream, right? So again, back to the urine, a stream or a current that you're able to tap into and out of, like the Force, right? So the Jedi use it for good, but the Sith use it for evil, but they can both tap into it,
Mhm.
right? Because it's always there. And to me, alchemy will continue to be another one of these forms of technology that only a select few had access to, and only a select few knew how to maneuver it and manipulate it. And
Yeah, I meant to bring that up earlier too. That talking about how where all these people go if they did create it, it makes sense that they won't want to go into hiding. If you had the stone, that's something you could easily get killed over, or people just wanting to use you to create stuff, to do stuff.
well, that's where you get stories of the immortal alchemist. 100%. Nicholas Flamel was one of these guys that he disappeared, and people said that they saw him later on in other places, and maybe this is how you get. Or we talked about cryptids earlier. Well, vampires. Think about like the vampire and the werewolf. So if they were doing other stuff to transmute themselves, and there's a book by the it's called Rothschild's Canticles. And I'm sure if you listen to the episode that I did with Tony Merkel, we brought it up in that episode. And this book allegedly was how to create it helped you also create monstrous beings and entities, because it had some sort of knowledge in it. And it always seems to me, it always seemed that these stories of like werewolves versus the vampires, well, what if that's encoding something? Maybe that's encoding two different sects of alchemy in some sort of way. And if you see all these, I don't know if you've seen the pictures of like these celebrities, they have like old pictures of them and they look like the doppelganger there's one of like Nick Cage where it looks like a Nick Cage, I think from freaking 1800s or
Oh
something.
yeah, and Keanu Reeves. There's the whole thing about
Keanu
him being
Reeves.
immortal.
Yeah, so all that whole thing, bro. I mean, maybe there's something to that. But I don't know. Are you gonna try and create a philosopher? I know some people have tried to create homunculi.
I don't know about the homunculi, but if I could have the space and have the time to kind of keep watch, I kind of would want to, just as an experiment, document.
Yeah. No, I've thought about it too, but I don't have the time or space.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be boiling my piss in a corner somewhere in my backyard, bro. You know, my
Yeah,
neighbors
because
come
you
out.
gotta like ferment it, which can take each cycle could take like 2 weeks. You gotta do it a couple times, and then you get like the distilled, which is the light stuff, and then the salt. You
That's
gotta
disgusting,
recombine
bro.
that. It definitely is, but it's interesting too. You brought up tasting it. They mentioned that in the book that if you swallow the stone, it can heal you that way.
Yes.
Or if you liquefy it into the elixir of life, you can drink it.
Mm-hmm. Do you
Um,
make a piss
but
tea
yeah, I
out of
was
it?
saying that when you get to a certain point, yeah, you actually can start smelling a sweet aroma from it. So it's interesting you brought up that it tastes sweet too.
The urine will smell sweet.
What once you get to like a certain point, yeah, the gases, the smoke coming from it would start to smell sweet.
What the heck?
So I
Damn,
wonder if
bro.
there's a connection that way.
Yeah, no, you've done more research into this than I have, dude.
I really only read this book and watched a few videos.
Yeah, there's a video that I translated with a guy who I believe he was Eugene Consoliet's pupil, Patrick Riviere, and he was a French alchemist. And it's on my YouTube. I translated it from French to English, and allegedly, he creates gold. He transmutes gold on camera. I don't know, dude.
Yeah, plus in this day and age, having some gold will be handy.
Yeah, most definitely, definitely, and that's where, you know, you mentioned earlier the blood of the Nephilim and or the urine of the Nephilim and all this stuff. Well, they say that's how the Knights Templar were able to get so much gold to fund all these cathedrals, and this is where Falconelli comes into because they said that they purposely put the secrets into all these cathedrals that they built, and you got the mystery of the I don't know you got to read the mystery of the cathedrals, bro. That book is crazy. And that the secrets to the Philosopher's Stone are hidden on the walls of these cathedrals for those that are able to figure it out. So you got to check that book out next, bro.
Yeah, I definitely want to do more research. And any book recommendations I'll take. I'll try and go back and listen to find them.
Yeah, I'll shoot you an email with that one that I told you about. That one's super interesting, and I really enjoyed reading it because the guy writes it, and he's got like an interesting way of writing. But he was. You ever heard of Mark Stavish?
Doesn't ring a bell.
So he's like this ceremonial magician guy, occultist, and he runs this school. And he knew this guy, Joseph Leszewski, and allegedly, this guy worked with Goetia a lot too. But there was this connection between the homunculus that he had created and this attachment that he started having later in life. And they believe that whatever he had created when it died attached himself to him. So almost like this egregore of thing came forth from him working with the alchemy. So who knows if that's a byproduct of working in these things. What if when you create a homunculus, right, the Nephilim can use it as a vessel, because how I mentioned earlier, some researchers believe that homunculi were vessels for demons or that they were artificial demons. But wouldn't that be like a good failsafe? Like the Nephilim knew, right? If they are interdimensional beings and they could see into the future, they knew they'd be wiped out at some point by God from all the things that they were doing. And they gave people their dead man switch. Like, hey, once you start creating these homunculi, we can inhabit those vessels. And you mentioned earlier about mixing DNA. Well, that's the whole story of the Anunnaki, dude. creating this hybrid creature, and that's what we are. So, in any story of creation, dude, in any story of creation, we're homunculi. We're golems or homunculi.
Yeah, bringing that up, it makes me think of there's a movie out there called I, Frankenstein. I think they bring that up, that I think they say something about they can't possess humans because humans have souls, but he could possess the Frankenstein because he doesn't have a soul. He's just a living body. That's why they want to create more Frankenstein monsters. So that kind of makes sense. But also, if the Nephilim didn't have souls, that's kind of why they become like demonic spirits once they died. Could you say the same thing about Homunculus? If it's artificial, would it have a soul? Would it become angry that it can't pass on spiritually?
Read Goethe, Faust. And in that story, the homunculus that he creates with the help of Mephistopheles, the devil, wants to be human. He lives and strives to be human. So there's something to be said about that, about the human experience. And maybe these things strive to be like us, because at the end of the day, we were created in their image, whoever they are, right? Whoever they are, we were created in their image. And maybe these things want to be like us, to be, again, that this emulation of God, of becoming God. So maybe alchemy is used as one of those plugins to be able to become a god. Because when you start to take apart your homunculus, you can acquire godlike powers from doing that. Maybe that's why human sacrifice is such a big thing in these ancient cultures. Because they believe that it made a change in reality. They believe that it would bring forth more rain for their crops if they sacrificed somebody every year, every few months, or however it was. Look at the Aztecs or the Mayans. They killed thousands and thousands of people in one day, like 20,000 people in a day or something.
Well, actually, you bring that up because I've actually read the Satanic Bible, the LaVey, and they bring that up about how there's something in blood, but the act of like sacrificing all the fear and that kind of energy being released is what powers the spells, not the actual sacrifice. So maybe that's something to it too. You have so many people lined up in fear of being sacrificed, and then you have that release once they do, can feel something.
Yeah. No, yeah. I think that there is power in blood magic, right? And think about the composition of what blood is made out of. It also has metals in it, right? And I'm sure that these alchemists were also mixing their blood into their concoctions that they were making.
I think they mentioned that you could do it with like blood too in the same process, but I don't know how well that one would work as much as the urine.
Well, dude, go ahead and try it out and just report back. Let me know how it goes.
Definitely.
Because it sounds like
you're a documentary out of it.
Yeah. So you said that you make documentaries, bro. What kind of documentaries do you make?
Well, I want to get into. I want to go like cryptid hunting and whatnot. I try to make documentaries like that.
Where are you at?
I'm in Arizona, in the southwest, the Yuma area. But there's all kinds of cryptids I hear about up north, like in the White Mountains, Flagstaff area and stuff.
Yeah, you're over by Donut in Arizona, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's talking about like ley lines and stuff. That's a huge place.
Yeah, I'm gonna check this movie out too. I, Frankenstein. I wrote them all down. The other one caught my eye, the Banshee chapter, and I, Frankenstein, 2014. I'm gonna check these out. Yeah, and I'll send you that book, dude. I'll email it over to you because you gotta check that out. Once you read that book, dude, it's gonna psych you up. It's gonna pump you up because I really enjoyed it, and a lot of the stuff that he has in it is like, Because the one thing about alchemy is like it sounds so simple, right?
Mhm.
Like anyone can do it. You just follow the steps. How you say it's pretty straightforward. It's all here. But is it? I mean, if it was,
Yeah, that's the time and energy you put into it to make sure it goes right.
and maybe that's the key, dude.
I
The
think they
the
mentioned that
focus.
it's the in some ways it's the ultimate spiritual test because of the patience you have to have
Mm.
to see it all the way through.
Yeah, no, I like that. Definitely.
Yeah, because like I said, some documents say as the earliest you can create it, it would be like a year and a half. So even that's a long time to dedicate to something.
Wow. And that's all in that book, right?
Yeah, they break down in some ways, like the different meanings and stuff. When they say like a day, they mean a week. See, oh yeah, let me turn my camera back on. They they show like the different translations of the words,
Mm.
like what Mercury means, Saturn, all that.
Yeah, there's been
It's very interesting.
a couple translations that I've been meaning to do. One in particular is the a commentary on the first chapters of Genesis by this alchemist, this German alchemist from the 15th century. I actually hired a German translator to fix some of the text that the AI hadn't picked up correctly, and I've been meaning to translate that because what secrets are in that. That's a book from the 15th century that how many people probably have read it,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I
And
gotta.
I think they bring that up too in the book, how many books still exist that didn't just get damaged, accidental, just through time.
Mhm. Yeah, no, definitely. So I'll check that out, and maybe once you read that book, we can get back together and see what you thought of it. Because I think you'd enjoy the book, dude.
Yeah, definitely. I'll hit you up when I'm done. We can schedule something.
Yeah, for sure, man.
We've been going an hour and a half more or less. Do you want to call it quits? You gotta go?
Yeah, we can start wrapping it up. I don't know if you had any more
Because I wasn't sure
questions.
how much time you had. I would figure at least an hour would be a good conversation. I
Yeah,
know you're a busy guy.
usually 90 minutes is what I keep it at.
Okay. Well, yeah, thank you for coming. You want to shout out your stuff again?
Yeah,
Your
find all my stuff at
socials?
tjojp.com, at the one on one podcast on pretty much any major podcast platform, social media platforms. I'm on YouTube. I'm everywhere. tjojp.com.
All right, thank you. I've been Alex Myers, and this is the All About Odyssey. Thank you.
Thanks, bro.